Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose. Welcome to Built with Purpose. My name is Chris Fay. I'm your host. I am fired up to have my man Chris Dornfeld on the show today. Chris is the president and co-founder of Whistle Rewards, based in St. Louis, Missouri. We had the opportunity to meet probably a year or so ago, and so when we were chatting about some business stuff, invited Chris on, and so I am fired up to have some fun with you today, my man. So, Chris, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's great to see you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, and always great talking to you. Always great talking to you.
Yeah, as we were prepping, we were sitting here saying, it's typically like a 45 to 50 minute, but I think every time, we talked, every time we get together, we end up having, probably like a 3-hour dialogue. So we'll have to snip out the highlights of the conversation.
Good luck editing. I mean, I'm known for being a little long-winded, so we'll do our best.
All good, and I do have to just generally some self promotion here. I appreciate the hat that you're wearing, the Treble Hook hat. That's awesome. Love. You
got to get a logo behind you. I know. I say I look like a NASCAR pit crew with all the logos I'm repping, and you're like a nice sound studio.
Yeah. You'll keep flip flopping. Yeah, they've told me we're working on doing some logos behind me. We did get the tree, so the tree is sprawling environmental plastic tree is really cool. So, well, awesome, man. So we'll just kind of wrap through some stuff today. I do want to give you a chance to do a quick intro, but before we get started, a couple icebreaker questions to get the minds rolling. I know, so you're you live in St. Louis. I've been there a couple times. I think we actually had the chance to have dinner together. Favorite barbecue spot in St. Louis?
So like any good St. Louis and who recognizes we are really the crown jewel of barbecue in the United States. And I'm sincere when I say that. It depends on what you want. Right. It depends what you want. I'm a big Pappy's fan. There's some debate whether it's that, Salt and Smoke. There's some great places in the Loop, an area that we have. But there's a half dozen really fantastic barbecue places. I put Pappy's because I think their ribs are just out of this world. It's just unbelievable food. And if you have a chance to visit that place, it will forever change your perspective on what ribs should be barbecued.
See, it's funny for me, like living I grew up in Georgia and I live in South Carolina now. So kind of these Carolinas and Georgia, they always kind of argue about what types of sauces. And I'm like, honestly, I love Texas style brisket. Like that's my gig. And so I just kind of let them argue it out and I just go find some good Texas brisket.
Yeah. I mean, this is like debating like, which is your favorite kid? Like, well, I love them all. See, like I'm never unhappy when like, well, that's in front of me. I'll just
never leave a barbecue joint, mad. I usually leave there. The endorphins are high and, got some good hits. So, super cool. And then, so Chris, kind of thinking through just for the team. So you co-founded a really interesting company, but you have you've got a background in technology. And so just give us the super high level on kind of your background and then kind of introduce Whistle Rewards to us. Cause I was really intrigued when we first met.
Yeah, so my background actually going back, I started as an architect, so knowing we're kind of in the AEC world feels very comfortable to me, and worked for the at the time the largest architecture firm in the world, designing projects, and really enjoyed that. But long story short, in the late '90s, I got pulled into tech, helped a friend build an internet service provider, really began to look at digital transformation and how architecture really taught you about designing spaces for people and how do you create experiences, and really began to look at technology as a vehicle to do that. So became the first CIO for the city of St. Louis, led digital transformation of government, did a lot of interesting things in the community in terms of, building out large free Wi-Fi zones and increasing fiber optic capabilities in the city, built the first tech incubator, got involved with building a sort of innovation ecosystem. So it's been this journey for 20 years of really looking at the human experience, technology, and how do we create better outcomes, and where do those gaps occur? Why do we not create those better outcomes? Whether it's transforming city government, whether it's improving performance of a company and a team and culture. So that's really been the journey I've been on, and Whistle's a bit of a culmination of that. My business partner and I were running one of the largest motivation incentive companies in the country, and most recently And we just begin to think about there's a better way to really understand how do we drive the performance that we want from people, and spend a fair amount of time studying, neuroscience, behavioral science, data. Our background was more data, AI, tech building. And technology will tell you what's happening, right? And good technology can begin to predict what's going to happen based on fact pattern. But behavioral science is really where you begin to understand, well, what do I do about it, right? When I begin to identify this is happening, how do I change the outcome? Technology doesn't tell us that very well. And that it's a marriage of those things where we begin to say, there's real opportunity and there's a tool set that we're not really tapping into that can help drive these better outcomes. And that was really the genesis of Whistle Rewards. So we began to look at how you can use rewards to help people break resistance cycles to new technology or doing new things. The biology of this is we're hardwired. We get these chemicals that fire in our brain that cause resistance when we face something new, right? Whether it's a little adrenaline, a little cortisol, but we feel a little stress. If you're walking on a path and see a dark cave, your immediate reaction is, and we should all run in there and it'll be joyful. It's all right. Let's proceed with caution. And so that's the same resistance we get with anything. So I've never seen, site supervisor show up and say, "Hey, we got a new safety protocol I want everyone to follow."
Yeah, and I'm fired up, man.
No one's going high five. Like, all right, like, so we're naturally like, oh God, right? That reaction is hardwired in us, and so we realize is you can use rewards and incentivize people to make, work through these changes to begin to address some of these issues. And you can do it in really efficient ways. And I won't go into the detail of all our sort of recipe and secret sauce, but there's ways you can kind of improve these outcomes. And net is what we're showing with things like tech adoption, safety behaviors. We can get 200-300% improvement within a population. So it's pretty incredible when you really can get everything working the right way.
That's awesome. So quickly going back, because I want to dive into this whole kind of rewards conversation and just this changing behavior, right? Because I think that's super interesting. One thing that popped out to me, you said you are the CIO of the city of St. Louis and kind of in this government space. And I don't know if this is just general perceptions, but oftentimes when people think about government, they oftentimes don't think about the most forward-leaning, technology-forward organizations. Like what was that like being kind of an innovator, tech-forward individual working in government? Is that a true kind of assessment, or what was that like?
It was. I was very fortunate that the mayor at the time, who had brought me in, is a much younger buck. He was really supportive. I mean, it was his initiative and his vision to say, I really want to bring us forward. The nice thing with government, at least when I showed up, was they were a good decade behind. So, right. And I feel like construction in some ways is the same way. What that creates is an opportunity for low-hanging fruit to get wins pretty quickly and show momentum. So coming from where I was coming from, realizing there's some little improvements we can do. There's some things we can just fix very quickly, but are very impactful to people, right? So just grabbing that low-hanging fruit was great, and then allowed you to build trust and confidence and tackle bigger problems, like creating new agencies and consolidating resources, because people could already begin to see the benefit. So when you painted the picture of the future state, but that future state might be 3 or 5 years away, it's going to take a lot of work and discipline to get there. People could buy into that a little more successfully because they already felt like, momentum.
To your point, yeah, they see those successes, right? And we've kind of talked about demonstrating success, and that's really a critical step before you scale. And how do you demonstrate success? You gain that buy-in. People get excited. They want to do more. It's kind of the that flywheel spinning on the hedgehog concept.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's building that momentum, breaking, bad inertia patterns. And, candidly, I mean, getting back to the chemistry, the brain chemistry, like you're feeling good about those things. You're getting wins. You're releasing dopamine. So you want more of that. You want to build on that momentum.
Yeah. And so when y'all were, you and your co-founder, you kind of had this idea for this startup. And what was that? You'd worked for really large organizations, largest architecture firm in the world, the city of St. Louis. I'd call it large, stable organizations to, startup, founder, bootstrap, then raise money. Like what was that transition like?
Well, for me, because I've built 2 other startups before, it's a pretty familiar path, right? So I knew, there's a different set of problems you deal with scale versus subscale. The nice thing at subscale or when you're small is, boy, you make decisions really fast. I mean, you can turn on a dime, you can, adjust your model, you can improve your product, in days. In city government, I've got to get typically a whole lot of stakeholders bought in, approval, right? But the impact is enormous because once you make the shift and it's affecting, millions of people in a region, the benefit's huge. It just takes a long time to get there. So I look at them as both, you can get a lot of impact and create a lot of value through both those structures. It's just kind of the ride you're on, right? If you're okay dealing with systems and process and building that, those bigger institutions, right, can be great places. And if that drives you nuts and you're not going to thrive there, startups are great because I can pull over in a room, we can make a decision, we can implement, and 3 days later, right, change is made. So just a trade-off. The downside of startup is we're small. So if I want to tackle big things, takes a while to get there, right?
But it kind of goes back to what you're talking about before about changing behaviors and just, you see these wins and it starts speeding up. And I think that's one of the things that I've struggled with in the past is I oftentimes, I love moving fast. I love driving change, but I want to get there so quickly. You know what I mean? And you're only in a startup mode, you can only get there so quickly. And so there's this balance of patience, right? And trusting the process, but also this aggression and speed to move. So that's been a pull, at least that I've experienced. I'm not sure if you're kind of the same way, because coming out of a big company, you're like, man, once I get approval, dude, I can pull here. I got the cash here. I can throw these people at it. In startup, it's well, I've got the team I'm working on, so I can only do so much at so period of time.
Your resource constraint. You are in both organizations to a certain extent. It's just the process to resource is very different. One, you have budget line items, and so you're working within a defined box of, well, these are the resources I have. It's very hard to change the resource allocation. The other is you have no defined resource allocation, right? It's a blank sheet, which has a lot more risk, but a lot more agility in my ability to solve those problems. So I like them both. I've found both to be very different rides, but incredible experiences. And ultimately, as you say, the node to me is the commonality is working with great people. If you can work with great people in either situation, you can create a lot of value and have success. Build great cultures. It's critically important, regardless of size, that you have great teams.
And so when you and your co-founder and you all started the company, you're kind of both leading the businesses. How did you all decide to segment kind of the roles and responsibilities of leading the company?
Yeah, we looked at a little bit of just where our natural strengths were. We'd worked together before, at this other larger company. He was the president, I was a COO. We'd known each other for a number of years, so we've been friends for 2-3 decades. So we knew each other, knew our strengths, knew how we worked together. So part of our reason to partner was we could leverage those strengths. He's a little more finance, I'm a little more HR, right? And we collaborate really well. I would say we're equal partners as we innovate and really think about things with a little bit different perspective, but enough respect and intellectual curiosity that we're kind of open-minded enough to, not be hard and fast in our way. So it's been a really rich partnership and really one that I think has unlocked a great deal of value and potential because we can work so well together, and we have built a core team that I think is just a high-performing collaborative group.
Yeah, super cool. And especially, you hear these, when co-founders can work together and you have two peers and they jive, the magic that can occur, and obviously when they don't, there's challenges, but, for you to find a partner that you can trust and you've got a relationship with and kind of a background and a backstory, and you can then kind of carry that momentum forward. It's just unlimited what you all can do as a company. So that's super cool, man.
And I think the real secret to that is understanding, when you think about partnership, having been through a lot of different types of businesses and a lot of different, I've worked in government, I've worked in startups, worked in large corporations, worked in universities. Ultimately, it comes down to, can you problem solve and deal with conflict effectively with this other person? Inevitably, that's the when it's not smooth sailing, that's really where the things get tested. And if you have a lot of trust, as you said, right, and I can navigate that well, then you can solve about anything. If not, that's really where things begin to erode. It's just, can we problem solve when we are in conflict or disagreement?
What's been so when did y'all start Whistle Rewards?
So about 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So in the past 4 years, like what's been, you think about those challenges, like what's been the toughest thing that y'all have had to go through together or as a company? Like what you look back, is there like one moment or like, man, that day or that week or that period of time?
We were, if I took off my hat, you see a little bit of gray hair. We've been around for a little bit, so we had a pretty good established network. And probably the greatest challenge we faced as a business was we were initially, I'll say, successful out of the gate. Right, we're small, but we ended up with a portfolio of clients very quickly. But they're in very different industries and in very different use cases. And so the problem we had shortly after we launched was those different industries and different use cases wanted different features to be developed. They wanted the product. You could see we didn't quite have product market fit, right, in any specific area of industry or specific problem set. We knew we can change behavior, but how do you do that? Are you improving retention in an airline, for example, is something we're working on, training frontline leaders, or improving distributed healthcare workers and their retention issues, working with a concrete manufacturer and increasing their uptake of compliance training, right? There are a lot of different areas, but every one of those use cases, as you think about, well, how does our small team prioritize a roadmap? How do we communicate through our website and find more of those clients? We're not big enough to tackle, 10 industries at once. And so we had to spend 6 months basically saying, well, what clients are we going to slowly, piss off because we're not really going to do what they want us to do or head in the direction. And that's a challenging process, right? It's a little scary because you're saying, all right, we're going to, we intentionally put 30-40% of our revenue at risk, right, in our second year, and watch, some of it, probably, 20% of it trail away because we knew we're leaving that path. So that's tough. It's scary, right? It causes a lot of debate. Are we doing the right thing? You second guess a lot. But as we worked through it and saw momentum, it coalesced in the construction world, the industrial world, manufacturing is really where we found just great product market fit. As I said, for us, I think they're a little behind the rest of more technically advanced industries, which creates a lot of low-hanging fruit and opportunity. So it's a lot of fun to go in and quickly chalk up wins and show people, with a little bit of effort, man, we can really help improve your business performance and outcome.
Yeah, I love that, man. And it's funny, we've been through the very same thing, and it's hard. I think, whether you have an existing business or a new business and you start seeing opportunities and your team wants to go and sell, I mean, you kind of want to just sell to anybody that's going to talk to you and try and solve problems. But I think that, y'all are super smart in that approach because, really to stand out today and what customers are looking for is those solutions that can really help them scale. And it's hard to be an expert at everything and to solve value. And especially when you're developing product, you think about the time and the expense it takes to develop product and features. If those if those features are not in alignment with one another, good gracious, you can chase your tail with lots and lots of money.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying we're smart because, I look at it now and say, well, we were pretty dumb 3 years ago because we knew better. And yet, as you said, when someone's holding a big check and like, this is great, I want you to do this. Like, okay,
yes, okay.
Of course I can help you with that too. And yeah, you're a good client.
So today, so you've kind of made this pivot. You talked about like the construction, industrial world. Like, what's like the number one play? Like, where are y'all seeing the most value today? And then what I'd like to do is let's take that use case and just help the listeners and everybody understand, like, what does that mean? Like, we talk about rewards. So where's like a couple key plays?
I think the two things we're seeing the most traction in, there's kind of two components. One is really safety behavior. And that is probably the fastest, easiest way for us to deploy or work with someone, because in literally a matter of minutes, we can enable a safety manager on a job site or a factory floor to have a recognition and reward tool where he doesn't have to worry about getting everyone to download an app. He doesn't have to really do anything other than activate our account, and he can start sending rewards out to people, which is I can champion behaviors in the moment they're happening. So people are getting that dopamine hit and they want to do more of those behaviors. That's ultimately what we're helping build is a culture. That's a really easy one and immediately causes benefit. Where I think we have greater impact, but is a little bit more lift, is when we can help automate tech adoption within organizations. Because we're in an environment, AI is only going to bring about faster change. So we're in a state of constant, new process, new tools, new tech, right? You think of a job site. I mean, it is evolving job to job to job. Helping people navigate that, feel better about that sequence, get more comfortable, feel confident with what they're doing. That's a little bit, harder to set up because we might be integrating, for example, in Procore or the third-party systems, help drive those adoptions. We can do some really cool things with gamification. And although that's pretty lightweight to set up on our end technically, there's still a little bit of change management. We have to communicate to that population, or the company does. But that's where we're seeing, I think tech adoption and change management, the numbers are just extraordinary. I say that having been in change management for 20 years, saying, if you can get a 20, 30% lift in engagement, I'm super happy. We had a client, small general contractor, but they had an 800% improvement in their use of their project management system and tech within their population. So here they're making this investment. They've been making the investment for, I think, 2 years. It's way sub-optimized, right? And it's because people are resistant. I'm busy working hard in the field. I'm supposed to take 5 photos and document my progress and write some notes every day, right? Well, I've just spent 8 hours building. I don't really want to pull up my phone and go walk around my work and do all this. It's hard to get people to do it consistently. Turns out you can buy them lunch, give them little rewards, curate streak bonuses, or we've designed a series of tools. And when you can get an 800% improvement, really what you're saying is, I'm investing all this money in tech, and if I can get an 8-fold, improvement in my ROI on that, it's a massive return. Plus, I get all the benefit that the platform that I bought was supposed to deliver in the first place, right? I have better insights, I have better reporting. I can go back and analyze things differently. I can become much smarter, and AI tools and machine learning tools are going to make that easier and easier for me to do. We'll begin to proactively identify opportunity. How do you reduce risk? How do you increase performance and profitability? All this stuff is beginning to happen, but I've got to get people to adopt it.
Right. No, and I think it makes perfect sense. I think about some of the things that we do in our business as well. And, you think about, I think one of the challenges is today, and maybe we can talk about this in a bit, is just, the overwhelming amount of technology that is at our fingertips, vendors, providers, solutions, and, driving utilization and adoption of those. But I guess kind of going back to just kind of, we talk about kind of the neuroscience. You get some pretty interesting information when we talked about this over the years, but like kind of what works from a reward system? Because instead of us saying, hey, we're going to put a quarterly bonus for everybody that does X, Y, Z. I mean, yours, I'm calling them micro rewards, but you're catching them in the moment, right? And then, talk about like the difference in how that can impact behavior. And then to some extent, how does it not create after a while, like apathy? Like how do you keep people engaged? Like how do these small rewards impact the behaviors?
Yeah. You've touched on probably a half dozen really key issues where each one of them, right, is an important component. And so what we focused on was, well, how do we stitch all those components together to maximize the benefit? Because you can do one and have a little bit of benefit. One of them you mentioned that I think is really important is time. So we'll talk about training a dog or training an animal, right? You can't train the animal by saying the next day, hey, don't pee on the floor. Right. The association is lost. Although we are smart enough to be able to build that connection, the primal part of our brain doesn't resonate. Intellectually, I can understand it, but the part that releases my, chemicals in my brain won't make that connection. So every day you delay a reward, you lose about 5% of that value in behavioral change. So often we see people saying, well, I'm going to do something at the end of the month. I'm going to say you're the employee of the month. You did these great things, or you're the safety employee of the month. I'm going to award you with a Yeti cooler. It's probably a really common use. And it's great. Of course I'd want a Yeti cooler. And it feels good to give something to someone on my team, and it feels great to get it. But it's so disassociated from the behaviors that I'm trying to get people to pattern. There's no connection, right? At the end of the month, you've really lost the entire effect. Versus what you want is the moment that behavior is completed. I upload something in the project management system, and my phone just goes, ding, great job. Hey, Chris, thanks. You hit the goal today. Here's coffee on me. $8 is immediately wired to your digital phone. You get a dopamine release. You pattern that a few times, and all of a sudden, I actually feel differently about doing that task than I did, a couple weeks before. So you mentioned how do we also avoid sort of apathy, right? In most cases, once people start doing that or interacting, you begin to change their mindset on, well, maybe I was a curmudgeon about technology in general. Well, once I get a couple things under my belt, and I think it's something we can all relate to, I sort of get comfortable with interface or using my mobile device as part of my workflow. I've lowered my resistance to future things related to that. So what we find is there's this ripple effect if we can then target, well, here's another thing I want you to maybe focus on. And maybe it's a financial report, or you can think of all the administrative things that are occurring.
Yeah, it's probably just like, hey, first thing, just log into the platform and do the first activity. But then over time, once that's developed a habit, you can start adding more and more
advanced things, right? And so you're moving the incentive down the road because there's always more benefit to be unlocked. But because I'm there, what we see is a ripple effect where they'll do more of the other things as well. So we don't keep incentives in perpetuity. Usually it's less than a month. We actually say to incentivize a behavior. Then you see a pretty nice tail of effect.
And is there a dollar amount that hits that dopamine? I mean, is there kind of like this sweet spot that says this micro reward needs to be worth at least X?
Not really. I mean, we're studying this and we'll continue to learn as we go because different rewards require, or different actions require different rewards, right? If I ask you to, open a door, sure. I mean, most people do that for, nothing really. But if I ask you to do a really complex task, that really feels like a burden, or it might take I might have to buy you dinner. So a lot of these little tasks, what we found is we grossly overpay for what we need to for most people to do it. So we worked with a constructor across 9 projects. We selected sort of 3 categories of project managers, some who were very tech savvy, some with the constructor felt were kind of pretty good. And then 3 we picked were kind of, they knew were curmudgeons and very resistant to technology. We moved the needle with all of them, right? They all improved on average by over 50% in their use of tech. The super user went, up, but he was already a super user, and the curmudgeon went up, but not as much as, he didn't meet the level of the super user, but we raised all the boats. What was really cool was we were testing like how small of a reward causes the effect. And they averaged about $5.04 a day or something like that. So net was they incentivized their whole team over the course of the month. I think spent less than $1,000 and saw a 50% improvement in technology use across all those supervisors. That's a tremendous result.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Now you think about just little things. And honestly, there's probably the monetary side of it is probably, and I'm maybe turning as a point of question, but like there's a monetary component. It's like, oh, great. Now I have an extra $5 that I can actually physically go do something with, but also probably just the instant recognition brings some level of joy as well. So, and for some people, one might actually be more than the others. Like the $5, like, yeah, I got $5, but man, I got an instant recognition. They put something, this tells me it's important. Like I'm in, like that felt really good. Does that swing happen? Like are different people wired a little bit differently? Like
it's less to do. So yes, but it's not as much as you'd think. Most people are, we like to think, I've had people tell us like, well, people should just be intrinsically motivated. Like, yeah, but we're not. Like biologically, we're not. We are incentive-based creatures. So what we see though is that recognitions are really important, and rewards are kind of the icing on the cake or a multiplier to that. So, right, if you're doing nothing, of course you want to recognize people. And if you want to sort of lift that 50% more, or have that recognition have more impact, tie a reward to it, just for some of the things you talked about. It helps. And what we see is we actually see people use those, dollars as they accrue for sometimes really basic things. We steer away from, points-based systems where you save up and buy an expensive toaster in a catalog, or it's not where you're not meeting people where they are. We did a survey with a couple hundred construction workers and talked about rewards, talked about incentives, gathered a lot of really good data. And one of the questions we focused on was, what reward would motivate you the most? What would have the greatest impact? 9 out of 10, it's a cash or cash equivalency. And because we see how people spend those funds, and in our systems, most of those funds go to gas, groceries, and kind of basic life needs. So that has an increased motivating effect because I'm helping you address sort of maybe challenges you're facing in your life. So the reward has more. Again, this is a improvement, and so we're looking at, well, how do we improve all the levers a little bit? Adds to a really big improvement overall.
Yeah, and I'm sure like sometimes they're like, man, that Yeti cooler is super awesome, but God, I just kind of wish I had $100. Like,
I need to put gas in my truck. I'd much rather have a full tank right now than like another cooler to throw in the back.
I got a flat tire with a badass cooler in the back. I just something's not right here, man.
That's right. And it's for whatever reason, I don't know why the Yeti coolers are so popular. We just came from a trade show, the Association of General Contractors, and I walked down just our row, and there were 6 people giving away Yeti coolers as like their door prize, and I was just cracking up. Like,
I am always amazed. So I'm a Yeti guy. I'm a loyalist to Yeti. There's a couple brands like that I'm a super loyalist to. Yeti's one of the ones. I'm never going to buy Arctic. I'm never going to buy the other things. Like, I'm a Yeti guy. And so I enjoy going in like those, you go to like the cool hardware store that has like tools and Yeti coolers and big green eggs, and same thing. I'm a big green egg loyalist. I think I always will be. Although Kamado Joe's really, they're hammering me right now, but what's interesting, man, is like on the Yeti side, like you walk into this like little small hardware store and the inventory that they have to keep is crazy. I mean, it's just walls of stuff, it's absolutely nuts. It's great. I mean, what a cool business model.
Yeah. I mean, they figured out a brand and an audience and done an incredible job. I mean, I admire that company. Yeah.
So let's take, there's, what y'all have seen, I guess, in these industries that are a little bit behind, right. And needing kind of tech adoption. And then we've got, kind of reward system, these micro rewards, and really in areas like safety is a very easy low hanging fruit. But then the tech adoption can go in so many different areas. And I imagine there's all sorts of things of, I think about in our business in CRM, I think about in ERP, I think about sales rewards and tech support. I mean, just in those industries, it could really climb. Look out like a couple years. I mean, thinking about all the things that are changing with AI and just the speed by which these things are changing. Like, what do you see as kind of another big major disruption that y'all are either preparing for or embracing, or how do you see this AI evolution kind of changing, your business model or the way that your company goes to market?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in that it's the acceleration of our productivity as an engineering team, right? So it's starting to accelerate our roadmap, right, in a way we can actually see, and that causes us to begin to think a little differently. We're thinking about a much more complex tool set that exists. We already do some interesting things with AI in terms of language models and helping you perfect a recognition. We can ingest different forms from different companies and actually begin to grade them. So we know we can increase quantity, but we're also building some tools to measure quality because we want to incentivize, not just, don't pencil whip something, or, we want you to do it well. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the next year, but also just AI tools that solve much more complex problems around, if you think of a sales performance program, or there are more complicated behaviors with distributed populations or more complicated populations, how do you really begin to optimize that? Where I would see this going is almost to an individual level, where we can begin to design for an individual the right incentive model to maximize their success. As you said, there's some graph of how I'm motivated, right? What's going to motivate me? Maybe it's not the Yeti cooler, maybe it's this thing, or we'll begin to be able to tailor things to an individual level and have lots of things happening in real time, which will just help me as an individual perform more effectively, be more successful in my job, right? It's almost like having a co-pilot help and guide you to like, well, if you do a couple of these things, they're really valuable. And by the way, you're going to get rewarded and incentivized, through that journey, and it's happening in real time. That's a win for everybody, right? I want to show up and be better at my job. And if I have a tool or co-pilot to help me just do that day in, day out across any industry, I think that's a lot of value add.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about like just figuring out a way to have more of an individualized experience based upon your role, but also just quite honestly what motivates you, and figuring out to learn that over time. It's like, hey, this persona in kind of the sales organization seemed to really respond so much better, if they're between this age group and carrying this level of quota. I mean, you just kind of forecast and see how you can start having these different level of experiences. And then I imagine in your technology and kind of in your business, right now you have to kind of create we would call it, I guess, a campaign or something, kind of spin it up and here's what I want. But I could just see, AI in your space just automatically, hey, based upon this persona, this is what we see works best. And it can augment that over time. And the tool is just doing some of the work for you and obviously facilitating the highest value payments, et cetera. But,
yeah, and we're seeing some of that with our partnership with Procore. We're at a big platform because they have a big data set that we can tap into. And we're already seeing some of that optimization where we'll come in and say, great, from what we've learned now, we'll sort of recommend this is the easy button approach, right? So there's not a setting up the program. It's really just hitting go if you want. You can get it and edit the details, but we've already kind of optimized that one, right? That one sort of project, if you will, how to drive the best outcome. And that we've tuned now where we pretty consistently, I think we just looked at 6 different clients we have in common with them. And our average increase the last 90 days was 258%, right? So that's a great, that's just one swim lane of their platform. But, our goal is we'll do this across many different technologies, just help them get a lot more value, help the tech company, help the people, help everyone get a lot more value out of it.
Yeah, I love that, man. And how do y'all, just trying to think about like your go-to-market. How do you, small company, you're 4 years in, you've demonstrated some amazing value in these different organizations. You kind of talked about the industries that you serve. You talked about, partnerships like, large companies like Procore and leveraging their data sets. Like, as you kind of think about going to market, what's been some of the best ways for you to connect with customers? So, to connect with the ideal customer profile, the general contractors or industrial folks.
Yeah. The first step was mentioned before was narrowing that focus. The biggest thing was like, not try to talk to 20 ideal customer profiles, but really pick one and just live into it. And then I think it's meeting them where they are. So in construction in particular, I think industrial in general, it's a little more relationship driven, a little less transaction driven than, like a tech sale or, other areas. So being part of those associations, getting to know the individual. I had a great conversation over dinner one time with a general contractor and was asking me about this. And he was explaining, their business is a little unique, the construction world, because he said, listen, both your livelihood and potentially your life is dependent on that partner sitting across the table from you. So I need to be able to look at him and know, you're going to erect the steel the right way or not, drop something or, misconnect some electrical conduit. So trust is just really an important component in this industry. So we've found as we've had some success, get some wins, get to know people, but get to know the industry a little better, right? Those personalities, that's been really helpful. So we're speaking a lot of conferences. We're trying to be great thought partners. We take the approach as well of, we're in it for long-term value creation. We're pretty flexible on our, initial pricing because we want people to see the value we create. And then I know you'll want to work with us. So that combination has been really helpful.
Well, I imagine your system is just, you can take one probably piece of low-hanging fruit, show significant ROI on that, and then all of a sudden it becomes infectious. It's really, I imagine the hardest step is just that first step of putting it in place. But then once it's in place, it's probably probably kind of a network effect from there forward.
Yeah, and that was the challenge we had. There's not a lot of Google searching around, platform to help change behavior of my employees, right? It's just not a common search.
People aren't searching for that.
Although that's what we're all trying to do, right? We're actually trying, like almost everything we do. I'm training people. I'm trying to help them up their game in some way, and ultimately the way they do that is how they behave. They're more efficient using technology. They're a little more productive. They're working a little harder. So as we prove that out and get more proof points, it becomes a little easier. But it's really about meeting people where they are, and as you said, unlocking the value. Once you begin to do that, almost everyone we've worked with begins to identify 20 other ways they can, it sort of clicks like, the other behaviors I'd like to improve are this, and this.
To some extent, I think about like my, kind of our experience in the AI space and ChatGPT and such. And, I worked with an AI consultant last year for a little bit. And the recommendation for him is like, start using it. That's it. Get in there, start using it. The more you use it, the more you'll find potential applications for it. It becomes infectious and so on and so forth. And I just look at my just personal and individual adoption of tools, just over a year by being curious and taking that first step. But I would have not gotten anywhere near where I am without that first step. So yeah,
100%. And it's just that experimentation, right? You have a whole new set of tools, and it's sort of, there's no better way to learn and understand that potential than just start, right? You experiment.
So a CIO question also mixed a little bit with what you're seeing kind of. So if we kind of talk about this construction, industrial, like, I just think about some of the people that are listening to the show, and they're leaders of companies, they're running big construction companies or design businesses, or maybe they're kind of up and comers in the business or manufacturing and such. Like, are there some common denominators you see? We talk about technology being a little bit behind in these industries. I mean, what are some of like the common themes that you see that make them behind? Like we talk about technology and digital transformation. Like, what are some of the common themes that you see that can help these companies move forward? Is it because it's such a physical act and it's so relationship driven? Is it because the mindset of adopting technology? I mean, like, what are some steps you think that these folks can take to take that next step in their journey?
Well, I think you identified it, which is, it's been a successful business, especially over the last 20 years, right? Most constructors, it's been a pretty good environment for a few decades. So there's not a lot of incentive to change if what I'm doing is, profitable and I'm growing. What's changing right now is labor pressure, right? So the number of people who are going to leave sort of construction industrialized world, because 20, 30 years ago, we shut down, trade programs in high schools, and, all these things fade out. So there's not a workforce that's replenishing what's retiring out. That's starting to create a lot of challenges, sort of macro level challenges in the industry. And it's causing people, I think, to reevaluate business models in different ways. That in the value prop with technology, right, as it improves and improves, is just getting bigger and bigger. And so I think people are finally realizing, and you see this especially in the bigger contractors, they have whole innovation teams now that are looking at AI tools, and you're seeing those wins, right? You're seeing things chalk up in huge efficiency gains, which is now convincing leadership and ownership to say, because I experiment a little bit, and that slowly trickles down then through the ecosystem. I was just at a conference in Florida and talking to the head of innovation for a multi-billion-dollar GC there. They built a really cool tool using a language model, which just consumes all the documentation around a project, right? So if you think of all the spec sheets and spec books and it's a huge binder, because everyone's trying to, go through a COIA exercise to say, well, I put all the documentation in there, therefore I'm not responsible if the caulk fails, right? But the guy in the field still walks up into a room and he's like, well, wait, what caulk am I supposed to use in this window, to seal it up? Like, do I have the right thing? And so typically I'd have to walk back to the job site, pull out the binder, thumb through the thing, find the right spec, and interpret it correctly. And they have a tool now where they can just pull out their phone, hit a button and say, I'm in room, 422. What does it say about window caulking? It'll immediately provide the result and give them, a link to, here's the documentation. You just think, like, that's not a life-ending problem, right? But how many times when I've got hundreds or thousands of guys on a job site is that action happening? And I've eliminated that 5-minute exercise that happens 100 times a day over the course of a year. That's $1 million probably improvement to the bottom line. That's a really simple thing for AI to solve. So I think, once you do that and demonstrate value, now all of a sudden I start going, wow, well, what are the other ways I can unlock profitability and how to begin to do that? So I think we're actually designing a maturity model right now for the construction industry with a group with the Association of General Contractors we've been working with. And it's looking at that. It's really laying out kind of the 5 stages of evolution of, you're not really doing much to really, you're doing all the right things. What does that begin to look like in a couple of different categories? But as you said, I think the best way is you put your toe in the water. How do you eat a whale? You take a bite. Like it's you're not going to get it done tomorrow, but
well, I think your perspective and just that the fact that these GCs have been so successful in it's, and it is still an experience based business. I did a podcast with the folks from Joris out in Texas, and we were talking about the knowledge transfer gap. You've got this senior level construction folks that have all of this industry knowledge, and to some extent you have these newer people coming in the business that they're attracting some really amazing people. And how do you effectively transfer that conversation? And then I did one yesterday with big construction up in Chicago, and just he was really talking about kind of the challenges of getting getting the workforce in. That in construction, to some extent, there's this blue collar perception that, hey, this is maybe not the career that I want to pursue, although it's this major industry, I can go make money and develop a trade. And so this whole labor conversation is out there. And I agree with you. And I think that, what I think about in our business is just that people are wired to do the things that they love, and there's so much wasted time that's being done via conversations, knowledge transfer, hiring, trying to figure out the Cox example. And so, exactly. And so it's like, finding ways in such a labor-based business to make sure that the labor that's being executed is being done in the highest and best use for the business, but also for the individuals. And, I think to your point, it's like finding those little areas, like, man, where can we save a couple hours? Where can we improve, the employee experience? Where can we do something a little bit faster? And then getting that DNA and that culture in your business. I think that's a lot of it. And it's interesting, like what I've seen, I think about kind of leadership in general and setting the pace and the tone. And, the leaders that are leaning into that and challenging their workforce to take this step seem to be the ones that are moving the quickest. Some of the ones that are a little bit more resistant or maybe not leaning as deep into it are not unlocking the same value. So there's also just kind of a general perception at the top, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's definitely changing. You see this, we've spoken at a few like YPO events, which is, ownership groups of mid-size, companies. I know you're a member of that, Chris. And as we've talked, it's very interesting to see the difference of people who are experimenting, who recognize this, maybe don't have it all figured out, but are going down that path, and then the ones who aren't. And there's a famous line from an Air Force general of, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevancy even less. And I think it's coming fast. I don't think people quite appreciate how quickly in the next 5 years, business models are fundamentally going to evolve. And as you said, I've got to get my population. The thing people need to focus on is how do I get my population just more comfortable with that change? We're not going to eliminate all the jobs. It's not work's going away, but our work is going to change, right? And it will be in a state of it's probably just will continue to change and evolve. It will probably be better for most people because, as you said, I can take away a lot of the tasks I don't really like doing. I can automate that because it's typically for most jobs and most people, boring, redundant things, right? Well, that's great. That's the best thing to automate. And if I'm doing more creative things or highly skilled things, I'm probably happier, right? And I can probably make more money doing those things, right? Because I'm really creating value by doing that, not walking back to the job site trailer twice a day.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's a win for everyone if we can actually build, as you said, the cultures, right, and orient our people to sort of be ready for this and not be fearful of it, right, but look for the opportunities together.
Well, I think your comment on change is really interesting. I love that analogy. I hadn't heard that before, and just thinking about like some of the challenges that we had to our team, and I laid out at a town hall meeting one day. I said, look, this revolution in technology is moving at a faster pace than anybody in this room can imagine. And even myself and some of the really forward-leaning people that are in our business. But yet we're going to grow as an organization. And so my task for you, everybody, is you can look at this one of two ways. How can you do double the work in the same amount of time? Or if you want to look at it as a different way, how can you replace yourself with technology? Either way, you're not going anywhere. Like we're going to need you. We're going to need each of the individuals in the company. But how do we really lean in and have you all help solve these problems? So if I'm the superintendent on the site, I'm like, golly, I keep going back to the darn job site the job site trailer looking for what if there was only a way, and somehow that superintendent is empowered to potentially try and find a resolution. I think that's a way to proliferate. I think that's where our leaders can help kind of get that messaging and that wording out to everyone and just says, look, we got to go figure this out, right? And everyone's got, you see your role and your tasks better than anybody else in the business. So it's up to you all to go figure out where some of these big wins are. And then, hey, as a company, we'll invest, like we'll do it, whatever.
Yeah. As you said, it's going to take all of us sort of moving together, building those cultures which really become change friendly. I think those are the ones that will succeed. And you can see that happening. You can see companies where their sort of spirit of innovation, collaboration culture really shines through. People are empowered to come up with new ideas. There's programs to help bring that forward. I think it's a little, in some ways, harder for a small business to formally make that happen, right? To have defined programs to say, well, maybe we have a innovation rewards, or we celebrate all that. But in some ways, it's also easier because you can adopt and change a lot faster. And I can pull my team in a room and just say this to them, like, hey, let's all really rally behind this idea and build this high performing organization. I love your question of, it's interesting to ask you on, like, how can we double everyone's productivity? Like, I think 10 years ago that might have been like, head scratching absurd. But right now I can say, like, yeah, there's a half dozen tools most of us can tap into that will do that if we're, in an office. I think it's starting to happen actually in the field now too. But
I'm curious, everybody kind of has their own thing. So you think about like AI and language models and ChatGPT and Perplexity and all the ones which one's your kind of go-to?
I mean, we use ChatGPT probably daily just because it's very accessible. I think it's so far for me produced some of the best results. And so just as you said, everything from, proofreading a blog post I'm writing, or, helping with an outline, to, hey, I have an idea for a new, piece of technology I want to see developed. Help me think about scoping that. What would the requirements be? Are there any best practices around this thing? And the speed at which it can research and pull information together is mind-boggling. A friend of mine, I heard describe at a conference a couple weeks ago, AI is like the smartest intern you've ever had, right? It's amazing how much they can access and what they can do. I mean, it'll blow you away. You still want to double check their work, right? You still want to look at it. They're not experts in the field or any area. They're just experts at organizing and collecting all the information. It's like going from, you've probably been around long enough. You remember going to the library to do research. You had to write a paper, actually had to get a card system and read books. Now you can just enter a search. This is sort of the same level of I think it's an order of magnitude improvement in your access to information.
There was I had coffee with a person this morning, and we were kind of talking about AI a little bit, and he said, "Man, have you ever gotten an argument with ChatGPT?" And I was like, "Not an argument, but I've definitely yelled at it, and I've cussed at it, and I've actually cussed at it and said, I've asked you to do this 3 different times, and you're still not doing it." And what's really funny, it actually kind of shapes up. Like, I think there's like something in the algorithm that says, "Hey, the madder the person gets, I better go triple check my work." So, have you ever yelled or cursed at the system?
I've not. I think mentally, my mental model is it's a poorly informed intern. I think that sticks in my mind. I've given up where I've realized, like, I'm either not saying this right or you just don't understand the request. But it's usually pretty specialized at that point. It's usually that it's something where I know a lot about a subject and it's clearly patterning information, but it doesn't really understand what I'm asking it, which to me is like, that's an intern, right? They're not going to.
So I mean, kind of as we close out today, a couple things. So we kind of end with this like built with purpose section. And so a couple thoughts or questions I've got for you. So one is, if you had to describe yourself in one word, take it as a leader, founder, what's one word that you would use to describe yourself?
I think the word I'll use that I've been told several times is resilience, right? That I'm a very resilient person, and just in life and business and all the things I've started, not everything's gone as planned, right? But your ability to sort of say, okay, how do I learn? How do I just take another step forward? I like that one.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's awesome. And then thinking about things that you're most proud of, I'm going to say personally and professionally. So kind of, let's start with professionally. What's like the thing that in your career or where you are today or where Whistle Awards is? I mean, what's the one thing you think you're most proud of?
A lot of stuff when I was CIO for the city come to mind because there were some government performance programs, improvements. I mean, just huge things that we did behind the scenes in terms of creating many years of benefit that no one will ever really know. That I'm pretty proud of. But what pops in my mind, I think the moment I felt the most pride or joy was I helped build a company. I helped a friend of mine build a startup company, grew it to, 30, 40 people. And as I said goodbye and took my box on my last day there, I was asked to go take a different role in another company. And I got a spontaneous standing ovation, and people just, I was very proud of the relationship and the culture. And I think then I really understood the impact I was having, looking at all these people who were, happy for me because of the opportunity, but very sad to see me go. And that was one of the most sort of emotional, touching moments I think I've had. And I felt really proud of just that I touched that many people's lives in a way it meant my relationship and work we did together meant that much to them.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes when you're just kind of in the trenches and doing, the day-to-day work, you don't take time to take a step back and appreciate what you've done. And oftentimes you don't get that. I mean, the recognition. We're sitting here talking about recognition. You don't get that feedback until something like that happens, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh! So what a cool story to get a standing ovation like that.
It was nice.
How about on the personal front?
Oh, my kids. I mean, that's an easy one. I mean, I think anyone who is. Yeah, I have 3 daughters. They're all amazing in different ways, all accomplished in their own ways. Still young, but I think in awe. I'm most in awe because I look at them in their 20s and what they're doing with their lives, and think about in my 20s what I was doing in my life and what I was focused on, and just how stupid I was. And I'm just in awe of all of their abilities. I mean, just how they improve other people's lives, what they're doing academically. I've one going in the military, and it's just the incredible sense of pride I have in each one of them. It's great.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool, man. That's such a neat closing. So, man, we've come to the end. Any parting thoughts that you have on a conversation today? I thought we covered a lot of good stuff, man. It's super exciting.
Chris, it's always fun talking to you. I can't wait to get you back here. We'll go try the ribs for sure. If you haven't been to Pappy's, anytime you want to swing to St. Louis. I think your note is probably the best takeaways. I highlight, our conversation. It's, start. I mean, it's take the first step, right? If you're worried about AI, you're worried about sort of where this is going, you're unsure what to do. The best thing is just to take a step and start experimenting. Someone out there, or someone in your company is already playing around with it. Like, find out who it is and just start moving. And I think it's important, one, just to begin to get comfortable and understand what it is, but the speed at which this is happening. And I've been, a fan of technology for a long time. But the pace at which AI is accelerating and will accelerate so many other things, really in the next 24 months, we need to start, getting ready for it, because it's going to fracture those who are sort of embracing that future and those who aren't. And those who aren't are going to, I think, just be left behind because their business models won't be relevant. The profitability, and I have a couple examples in the trades where I'm seeing drywall companies and just what they're doing with technology and knowing, man, you're going to disrupt your market over the next 2 years because you're thinking in ways that just a traditional, subcontractor is not thinking about their business the same way.
Well, it makes that I think about those opportunities and threats become, so much more not severe, but
it's just the speed at which they'll move. It's not, you don't have many years. It's going to be months to adapt. The nice thing is there are tools out there that will help you adapt that fast and change your business, but you've got to be somewhat familiar with that process. And that's where you just take a first step. You'll start learning it.
Yeah, love it, man. Well, Chris Dornfeld, president, co-founder, Whistle Rewards, man. I'm fired up that you joined us today, and obviously go check out Chris and his company. And I am going to book a ticket to St. Louis. We're going to go eat some barbecue, man. But I appreciate you joining the show today, and best of luck. And let us know if we can help you, my man.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Chris. Great being here.
Thanks. Okay, thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.